number 10 spot, we have the Church of Satan. Well, if you grew up watching any and all Hollywood movies, then you probably are with me when I say maybe it's a good idea that these churches are banned. But despite how creepy and scary Hollywood has made these churches to be, the church states that they are not depicted in an accurate light. The Church of Satan is a church that was founded by Anton LaVey. The church does not believe in worshiping a literal, powerful, supernatural Satan. In fact, they reject people that believe in this, and they refer to themselves as skeptical atheists, people who question everything. They describe their church as an underground cell system of individuals who share the basis of our philosophy, they say. The Church of Satan isn't banned everywhere. In fact, it is quite strong in the USA. But in Canada, for example, it has been banned. But like many banned religions or banned practices for centuries and centuries, people always find a way to still do whatever they want. In our number 9 spot, we have the Okinoshima, considered a place of worship. Okinoshima is actually a forbidden island that is considered sacred land. Forbidden to all women, that is. Yeah, we're in the 21st century, but yep, there's still some places we can't go to. Wild. Only priests, researchers, military, and the media are allowed on the island. Interesting combination. Apparently no one is allowed to speak of anything they see on the island. It is that secretive. You would think that they maybe wouldn't want to invite the media to the island then, but people are strange. The island is off the coast of Munakata in Japan. The islanders are said to worship the kami, which are spirits that are venerated in the religion of Shinto. It has several spiritual traditions, including a ritual purification. This must be performed by undressing and bathing in the ocean. Archaeological evidence suggests that religious rituals have been performed there since the 4th century. So interesting. Too bad I could never go there because the idea of getting to see such a spiritual place is such an exciting thought. In our number 8 spot, we have Christianity in China. It is not unknown that China operates under a communist regime, so it will probably not surprise you to hear that in 2014, crosses on Christian places of worship were being taken down and the people were discouraged to not go there. Of course the people did anyway, and they even held an overnight vigil before the police arrived. Apparently in 2014, in the town of Wenzhou at the Longgang Township Gratitude Church, the public security officials took down the 10-foot crucifix above the church. The congregants didn't resist this action, but of course it must be extremely hard for them to know that their own people will not support their right to worship. This has happened in many towns in China over many years, and as of today, I wonder if they are still against Christianity, or more specifically, the cross symbol. If there's anyone watching who knows the answer, I would love to know in the comment section below. In our number 7 spot, we have Eritrea. Often referred to as Africa's North Korea, Eritrea has some pretty harsh viewpoints when it comes to Christianity. It is said that its president, Afwerki, has overseen a volatile authoritarian regime that rests on human rights violations. Christians that are not a part of state-approved churches are actually considered a threat to the country and an agent of the West. I've heard this so many times before. Perhaps there is something us Westerners are missing that everyone else sees. What do we believe in that is such a threat to a whole society? What do we know that makes us a threat? In the summer months of 2019, over 150 Christians were arrested. Over 70 prisoners were being held in a type of prison where they are sent to an underground tunnel where they are forced to work and dig. Christians in this country have been fleeing over the last few years due to the violence and imprisonment. In our number 6 spot, we have St. Mary the Virgin, Clophill, England. Not so much banned as it is abandoned, but considering the spookiness that seems to go on at this church, I'm banning you from ever going to check it out. Unless you're a ghost whisperer. Research purposes are allowed. Just joking, go at your own risk. This church is extremely old, being built in 1350. The locals of the town believe the church to be haunted by the devil, as the altar is facing the southern direction, which is commonly known as a symbol of hell. On another note though, people have reported ghost hauntings and satanic presence in the church, so perhaps it is the entrance to hell. Regardless, people are told to be weary of the church, but I'm sure teenagers still go there and hold seances. I would. In our number 5 spot, we have the Church of Mary of Zion. This isn't a church that is fully banned, but it does have a part of it that has been forbidden for centuries. This is a church that claims to hold the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, or otherwise known as the Ark of God, is a very sacred relic of the Israelites. The area that it is being held in is banned and forbidden to any regular person. It's apparently kept in this church in the city of Axum, but there have been rumors that it was moved. Regardless, it is extremely guarded, and the monks that guard the treasure have been trained to kill with their bare hands. Okay, yeah, that's terrifying. They just sound like FBI agents. I bet they are, just dressed as monks. Anyways, the secrecy around the object has made it hard for archaeologists to confirm that it is indeed real. Apparently though, a historian once said that after viewing it, they concluded that it was a replica. But I wonder how much of that is real and how much of that is just to try to get people off the trail of wanting to see it. I doubt it would be highly protected if it wasn't real. Coming up at our number 4 spot, we have the Oradour Church in France. This is a church that has a very deadly past, and so be cautious if you go there. You have been warned. So much loss of life took place in this church that it is believed to be haunted, and many warned to not go near it for that reason. The town experienced a very deadly massacre in World War II, and specifically this church took a hit. A horrific tragedy that even though it's been many years later, the energy probably still lingers. So I ban you from going there, unless it's for educational reasons once again, then fair enough. But man, there are definitely ghosts, and I would not want someone to feel the sadness of wars past. The site is still the way that it was after this horrific day, but apparently there's talk that a new church will be built on the grounds. A lovely thought, but I bet you it won't get rid of the ghosts. In our number 3 spot, we have King James VI and First. Known as King James VI, King of Scots, and King James I of England and Ireland, he ruled from 1603 to 1625. England and Scotland were considered sovereign states, and yet he ruled both of them. Being the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and just being a king in general, you can imagine the pressure that was put on him. He came across many religious challenges in his reign, and it was his decisions that led to a wave of anti-Catholicism. He might have been baptized Catholic, but he eventually became Presbyterian and then leaned Anglican during his reign. He enforced strict penalties to practicing Catholics, despite the fact that he said he would allow them to practice as long as they lay low and be quiet about it. He put policies in place that aimed at only punishing a few Catholics instead of creating massive bloodshed, with the goal to hopefully motivate practitioners to leave the country. People still practiced in private though, including one of James's friends, the first Earl of Northampton, Henry Howard. In our number 2 spot, we have the Vatican Archives. Okay, not a banned church per se, but a banned church library, filled with secrets, lies, and church documents for centuries. Arguably a church of knowledge than just a regular worship church, but I'm sure the viewers that actually get to step inside to read its books quite definitely worship the books. At least I would. This is a place that is completely banned to the everyday public. Formed in 1475, but it is believed to possibly be older. Only scholars in higher ranks within the church can enter, and the scholars must show documentation of their qualifications and research needs. People have tried to break in over the years, but the archives are heavily guarded, and there has been no successful break-ins in a long time. People speculate that the archives hold proof of aliens being present on our planet, but I bet you they have way more interesting facts than that tucked away in their shelves. Probably proof of time travel. Arguably cooler than aliens? Would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. In our number 1 spot, we have the 1535 ban on Catholic churches. As a direct response from wanting to divorce his wife, but not being allowed to, King Henry VIII of England decided to declare himself to be the only supreme head on earth of the Church of England in place of the Pope. Talk about ego. Anybody that continued to stay devoted to the Catholic Church was executed and considered martyrs to the faith. Any act of allegiance was considered treason. It wasn't until after his passing that his daughter, Queen Mary I, decided to reinstate Catholicism as England's state religion, only to have her actions reversed by Queen Elizabeth I, who would physically punish anyone who didn't attend Anglican church services, and of course, there were still a fair few that still did. In our number 10 spot, we have the Vatican Library. The Vatican Library is a very secret library closed to the public. The only people that have access to it are popes and people that have gone through a lengthy screening process, and even then, they need to know exactly what they are wanting information on and will only be given info on what they ask for. This library is the top secret library library with history and documentation since the beginning of time. The amount of dark gossip that is within those walls, I'm sure, is exponential. From the little that we know, the Vatican Library holds letters from world leaders throughout history detailing major events that us little guys will probably never be privy to. I'm sure they even have documentation on alien sightings. The church refuses to talk about what they have and know, and it's really just a shame. I'm a history lover myself, and truly that would be a magical experience to be able to explore this library. Ah well. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to be recommended more content like this. In our number 9 spot, we have Operation Snow White. On June 20th, 1977, Michael Meisner, a Scientologist, contacted the FBI after allegedly being held captive for months. He revealed that he was a part of the biggest infiltration of the US government in history, in something called Operation Snow White. On July 8th, 1977, 156 FBI agents entered a Scientology center in LA in the largest FBI raid in history. It was discovered that 5,000 Scientology agents infiltrated the IRS, the US Coast Guard Intelligence, DEA, etc. There were bugged offices, planted false information, stolen files, and so much more found. Apparently, the goal of this initiative was to remove any bad reports about Scientology. Some of the founders were sentenced to a few years in jail because of these crimes. They definitely want you to forget about this, but I'm sure they have done it again, and I'm sure other churches and organizations have done the same thing. We just haven't heard about it, and perhaps they haven't been caught. In our number 8 spot, we have exorcisms. This one shocked me. I knew that priests could do exorcisms, but I didn't realize that this is something that they do much. I truly thought that exorcisms were done more often in the movies to young girls doing the crab walk down the stairs. Yeesh, thinking of that scene gives me the shivers. Anyways, apparently the Vatican had a chief exorcist named Father Gabriel Amorth, who had served over 60 years to the church and had performed over 160,000 exorcisms. Excuse me? Wow. How have there been that many people infiltrated by demons and this info isn't more widely talked about? Also, that is just this guy's number. Apparently popes and priests around the world perform exorcisms all the time. I'm shooketh. I could understand that the church wouldn't want to talk about this because it is a private, very sad thing to happen to a person, but man, that's a lot of people walking around feeling like they have demons within them. Pretty scary. In our number 7 spot, we have His Holiness. His Holiness was a book that was released to the public in 2012, which is based on the secret leaked papers about Pope Benedict. Apparently, the private documents were leaked by the Pope's butler. Yikes. Apparently, after an investigation, it was discovered that the individuals who were not from the Vatican were blackmailing gay bishops because they had broken their celibacy vows. The Pope went on to resign after these documents became public. Well, this is definitely a scandal, that's for sure. I remember people talking about this when it was happening, but I don't remember hearing the church comment on it. But I guess they sort of did through their actions, and I'm sure Pope Benedict was encouraged to resign. In our number 6 spot, we have the dead man on trial. This is a little piece of history that truly terrifies me and is such a testament to those times. In 897 AD, a literal dead man was put on trial. The man had been dead for 7 months. He had been dressed for the occasion by someone whom I'm sure was traumatized afterward. His name was Pope Formosus. He was being put on trial for acts that he had committed in his life. He had a lawyer and everything. He was found guilty and stripped of his former title as Pope, and everything he formerly did was declared void. His body was stripped of his clothes and put into rags before he was thrown into a river, the Tiber River in Italy, specifically because this river was where a lot of criminals' bodies were disposed of. Pretty gross. I wonder if there are any ghost haunting stories from this river. I bet you there are. In our number 5 spot, we have the Vatican Bank. The Vatican Bank has had its fair share of scandals over the years, and you best believe that the church will not be bringing any attention to it by speaking about it in any way. Allegedly, to start off the scandals, it is said that the Vatican Bank received a church tax from Germany's leader during World War II, if you catch my drift. Also, allegedly, a large amount of money was paid to the IOR so that the Western banks couldn't trust track the Vatican's spending. The details have never been released to the public, so Lord knows where they put their money. But why would you want to hide your money in the first place? Perhaps so that no one would know what you're up to if you're up to no good, but also possibly because someone might be a threat and that might be a reason to shield what you're doing. Either way, the secrecy is questionable. In our number 4 spot, we have mental illness in the church. When researching for this video, one of the things that shocked me was the amount of people that spoke about how the churches do not handle mental illness very well. You would assume that it would be approached with love and compassion and guidance to get help, but the common theme is that people have been told to just pray and it will make the illness go away. Some believe that this thought process stems from the very old thinking that mental illness stems from demons being in one's body, and so people are being told to pray them away because that's what was always done if someone needed, an exorcism or to get rid of an attached spirit. The biggest problem is that issues go untalked about. The people bottle it up inside, and when prayer doesn't work, the person dealing with the mental illness feels like a failure or like they don't have enough faith. Hopefully this is something that churches of all religions work on improving, as this is just unacceptable at this point in time. In our number 3 spot, we have shame. Within many religions, there has been the problem of spiritual criticism, which has led to emotional harm within the church communities. I'm not talking about outsiders passing judgment, I'm talking about religious community members passing judgments on each other. This bad behavior is committed under the banner of spirituality. From practices of shaming members if they don't fulfill religious expectations, to bad-mouthing members who have left, making people want to stay out of fear. Scientologists have been accused of doing that to members that have tried to leave, but also other churches have been accused of this as well. It's super unfortunate to hear that in communities that have, the core purpose of being loving, they are people that are shaming each other. Talk about not practicing what you preach. In our number 2 spot, we have misusing their power. In recent years, it has become public knowledge that the French clergy took advantage of more than 200,000 individuals since the 1950s, mainly males. The Catholic Church has been accused of turning a blind eye to this happening, and many have been outraged that this went on for so long without someone stepping in. Allegedly, it wasn't until the 2000s that some progress was made. Before that, the church showed complete indifference to the victims. Through a series of investigations, 2,700 victims gave testimonies about what happened to them, and thousands were identified through archives. A wide-range study showed that there could be up to 330,000 victims. In recent years, about 2,900 to 3,200 priests have become suspects to these crimes. Wow. Truly despicable. I hope that there is some kind of justice for these victims. In our number 1 spot, we have the Salem witch trials. Most people believe that the witch trials were a result of many things: bad weather, a poor government, and paranoid leaders. But what a lot of people may not be aware of is the idea that the Catholic and Protestant churches possibly used the trials to compete with each other for followers. Pretty dark. History.com reported that economists Peter Leeson and Jacob Russ believe that, quote, the two churches advertised their finesse at persecuting witches as proof that they were the best church to join if you wanted protection from Satan. Witches, after all, were doing the bidding of Satan, so getting rid of them was a way to protect people from them. Wow. Well, that will definitely persuade 1 or 2 people, that's for sure. It has also been noted that the Catholic Church did not fear or acknowledge witches in history until the Protestant Church became a competitor threat.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Beelzebub. This fallen angel is described in the Testament of Solomon. He is said to be one of the angels that followed Beelzebub upon his fall from heaven. He is the sin of pride and is known for his ability to lead people astray. He is most easily summoned in the month of July during the 5th hour of the night. After his fall from grace, he was left with only one red wing and was condemned to hell. Beelzebub is said to have control over the imprisoned souls of the underworld, and he plays a primary role in the demon world. Beelzebub himself claims that he was once an angel in what is referred to as the first heaven, and after his fall he began to roam Egypt. It is said that he was caught in the collapsing of the Red Sea, which left him crushed, and subsequently imprisoned in a pillar of water. But despite this seal, Beelzebub claimed that, quote, when he is ready, then he will come in triumph. In our number 9 spot today, we have Baal. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us out. Baal is ranked as the first of the the Ars Goetia, and he is the principal king of hell. It is said that he governs somewhere from 66 to 250 legions of demons and spirits, so he's clearly a workaholic in the darkest sense. In grimoire tradition, it is said that Baal appears in the forms of a man, a cat, a toad, or different combinations of those, with the appearance of a king or soldier, but with the heads of these creatures and on a set of spider legs. So I'm just saying, the guy's not easy to miss. I feel like that's pretty clear exactly who that is. In our number 8 spot today, we have Samael. Samael is an archangel whose name means the venom of God, the poison of God, or the blindness of God. He's not just any old archangel, however, he is the archangel of death. This means that he, of course, has taken lives under the orders of God. It is said that his method of doing this is confronting those he's been told to kill with his sword drawn. On the tip of the sword is a poison, so that when the target gets cut, this wound may not kill them, but the poison will ensure a slow and painful death. Pretty dark, right? In Hebrew lore, Samael is the prince of demons and the executioner for the death sentences handed out by God, and he is also known as the seducer. This is because he doesn't just kill people, he seduces them into sin, and then once they've sinned, he then gets instructed to kill them. It's like a weird sort of gaslighting situation. In our number 7 spot today, we have Ammon. Ammon is the great marquis of hell, and he is the 7th of the demons in the Ars Goetia. It is said that he is in charge of governing 40 different legions of demons, but his favorite thing to do with humans is making them fall in love with each other. He is also known to settle debates, and you might be sitting there thinking that this guy actually sounds pretty cool and nice, but despite these cool and nice things he can do and enjoys doing, he is anything but nice. Just like he can make people fall in love, he can do the exact opposite as well. He can cause people to turn against each other and can even will someone to harm the innocent, which is terrifying. To make that thought slightly less horrifying, it is said that he doesn't usually do this for no reason, and usually only does this when attacked or if someone is standing in his way of completing a mission. Still not good, but I suppose that's a little better than just random acts of violence. It is said that Ammon appears as a wolf with a snake's tail and that he possesses the ability to breathe fire. Or sometimes he will appear as a man with dog teeth who is inside of a raven. I don't know. Ask him about that one, not me. In our number 6 spot today, we have Belphegor. Belphegor is a fallen angel, and after his fall from heaven, he has now become the demon lord presiding over the sin of sloth. It is said that Belphegor served as a lieutenant from hell. He was sent to Earth on a mission by Satan. While he was on Earth, he grew quite fond of Paris, France, and it is said that because of this affinity, he now lurks deep within the catacombs under the city. Belphegor can be invoked by mortals who are wishing to find fame and wealth, usually through as little effort as possible, but these wishes are of course doomed to fail because of the demon's true mission to lure the dreamers into sloth. Through the failure of whatever was provided to the dreamer by Belphegor, he then draws them into procrastination and idle dreaming rather than the active production, which then condemns them to a life of failure. Belphegor is also recognized as one of the 7 great kings who rule over hell. In our number 5 spot today, we have Lucifer. Lucifer was an angel before he fell from grace. In the book of Isaiah, it says, quote, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Lucifer is now the ruler of hell, and he commands an entire army of sinners and demons, and he even tried to organize an uprising against God, so I think it's pretty clear exactly why he is a terrifying entity. He also uses his power to send terrible people to Earth in order to terrorize everyone, as well as to try and tempt non-sinners into the dark side. It is said that Lucifer also might just be the one who is responsible for the original sins that were seen in the Garden of Eden. Some believe that he is the snake who placed the temptation. In our number 4 spot today, we have Beelzebub. Beelzebub is a former seraph who turned into a high-ranking demon. He is one of the princes of hell and also oversees the Order of the Fly. He, Satan, and Lucifer form the triarchy of hell, which makes him one of the supreme monarchs of the underworld. As a seraphim, he was under the archangel Gabriel, but he was one of the very first angels to fall. Beelzebub is often confused with Satan, and while the two names can technically be interchanged, they are two separate entities, and in some writings, they even disagree at times. Beelzebub is associated with pride and gluttony, and he has also been held responsible for demonic possessions throughout the years. Unfortunately, flies are a very important thing for him, as it is said that he can take the form of flies. Now his main job is to rule over the fallen angels as well as all the demons that are originally from hell. In our number 3 spot today we have Asmodeus. Asmodeus is the king of demons and earthly spirits and is often referred to as one of the 7 princes of hell. He also represents one of the 7 deadly sins, lust. Before becoming a demon in his former life, he was an angel who was known as Asmodel, the angel of April and patience who rules the zodiac sign Taurus. But of course we are here to talk about his demon form, which is said to appear either as a ruthless, brutal monster or as a kind of mischievous demon that is playful and quick thinking. Honestly, I'm not sure which form would be worse to encounter. The monster would be scary, but a little annoying demon would be the worst. For the most terrifying exit I've ever heard of, it is said that Asmodeus will cut himself into pieces and immediately after disappear. In our number 2 spot today we have Azazel. Azazel is one of the chief governors of the Gregory, which is a group of fallen angel who married female mortals, which then produced the Nephilim, which were these scary giant creatures that ate mortals. In the beginning, Azazel started as an eater of sins, but the more sins he consumed, the hungrier he became, and this led to him not being satiated by the sins he was receiving. The reason he was cast from heaven is because he taught men how to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, which then led to humans being corrupted and thinking that they were invincible. It is said that the humans went so far that they were planning to raid heaven, and this is when God told Raphael to bind Azazel's hands and feet, open up a hole in the desert, and toss him in, casting him into darkness. This worked, and for a long time Azazel remained in prison. It was so bad that the jagged rocks near him tore his physical body away, and this left him as a mass of darkness covered in mouth and eyes. Later freed by Lucifer, he went on to join the demons in hell. In our number 1 spot today we have Asbiel. Asbiel had to be included on this list today if for any reason, because his name literally means God forsaken or God deserter. Asbiel appears in the book of Enoch and is the angel of ruin and one of the fallen angels from the Gregory. After leaving the angelic post and straying from the angelic duties, Asbiel dedicated his life to leading humanity astray. Asbiel completely abandoned God and his grace and wishes nothing from him. Asbiel believes that God is basically just another common celestial who has hoarded all of the power at the expense of the rest of creation. During and after his fall, Asbiel questioned why God wouldn't just completely remove any evil and malice in the hearts of his creations, and this led to him believing that God was a tyrant who only cared about worship and praise.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have St. Michan's Church in Dublin. This may be a church surrounded by the artsy urban setting of Dublin, but if you go deep inside the church, you will find mummies. Yep. Mummies. Its limestone vaults keep the air dry, which makes it the perfect holding area for preserving them. The church was built in 1095. Yep. Old. And it is said to have likely been a temple burial site before it became a church. To paint a picture of the crypts of the church, they of course have stone walls, are extremely dusty, and they're filled with coffins. And probably the devil is hiding behind them. Cute story time. When my brother was young, he saw a poster of The Mummy, the movie, and he said to my dad, "Dad, what about the daddies?" And that's what I think about every time someone brings up mummies. Ah, my brain. Coming up in our number 9th spot today, we have the Duomo of Cosenza, Italy. We were bound to have one church from Italy in here, as, well, Italy is seemingly only churches. I did a bus tour throughout the country, so I would know. This is a church in an ancient part of Italy, and it is so old that nobody knows when it was built. You would think that archaeologists would be on that and figure it out by this point, but as such, they haven't figured it out quite yet. Probably because it is haunted. Dun dun dun. By Satan himself. The church became a cathedral around 1184, and its architecture is supposed to be a sight to see. The church also has many burials on site and is home to the bones of its first priest. Humans are fascinating. Do you ever think about why we keep the bones of something that once was in a box and then put under the earth so that we can visit the place where it was buried every year even though we can't see it? It's just a solution for our mind to be at peace with the concept of death. Or just fascinating. Okay, moving on to our next terrifying church. In the number 8th spot, we have the Church of the Assumption of Our Lady, Guadalajara, Mexico. But don't be fooled. It may look old and terrifying from the outside, but it is just as old and terrifying from the inside. However, it does have one really cool aesthetic that all the other churches are jealous of. On the perfect time of day, when the sun hits it on its right angle, the church's bricks seem to glow with a fiery orange, just representing the depths of hell itself. I'm just joking. Inside its walls, it has neo-Gothic vaults with impressive artwork from the modern and late medieval period. But it also has a beautiful collection of mummies on display. Among the bodies is a child who was killed for converting to Catholicism in the 1700s. There have been many people over the years that have claimed to see her eyes blink and her hair move. Not terrifying at all. Coming up in our 7th spot today, we have the St. Thomas Anglican Parish of Mulgwa, New South Wales, Australia. Yeah, this church reminds me of your classic horror movie church. Small, old, and just downright creepy. This church has a very dark history and continues to creep its locals and visitors alike. There is a legend that has 2 boys who died in a fire in the bell tower after a prank went horribly wrong. Since then, it is said that any kind of light angers the spirits of these boys. There have been many reports of lights going on and off, even including the lights of cars going on and off as drivers pass by the site. I wish I lived close to this place so I could try this out, because this sounds like a ghost hunter's gold mine. Coming up in our 6th spot today, we have St. Andrew's on the Red in Selkirk, Canada. This is the oldest church in Western Canada and was created in 1831, which compared to the St. Michan's Church created in 1095, it's not that old. But nevertheless, the devil may still house this creepy landmark. It is said that both the church and its graveyard are filled with restless spirits that had died from tuberculosis and many varieties of the influenza. It's also the resting place of a lot of the earlier settlers and HBC officers. Visit at your own risk. In our 5th spot today, we have St. Michael's Chapel in Hallstatt, Austria. A beautiful church surrounded by a truly spectacular view of the mountains and an alpine lake. But inside, you will find the largest collection of painted human skulls. I'm sorry, come again, Melissa? The largest collection, which means there are other collections out there. What on earth made someone look at a skull and think, yes, I think I should paint this? Just why? Someone out there is thinking, because art. This is also a chapel that was made during a time when Catholics believed that they had to be buried in a consecrated ground so that they could rise from their graves when the end of the earth came. Were they predicting a future apocalypse, aka Walking Dead style? Hopefully? Not hopefully. But since this was such a popular need, the graveyard actually became quite crowded. And so, as a result, naturally, they decided that the solution of storing bones for religious displays was a viable solution. As for the person who decided that painting those bones would be fun and aesthetically pleasing to see, we have no name. Satan sounds like a good name to me. In our 4th spot today, we have St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Key West, Florida. This beautiful white church may look sparkly and alluring from the outside, but you should know better by now. It's only so new because it's been rebuilt so many times, because it is cursed. The site was once a Seminole burial ground, and then the land was privately owned by the Fleming family before the church was built. It became a church as a result of the Fleming widow being assured that her husband's remains that were buried on the land would not be disturbed. But of course that promise was broken, and as a result the ghost of John Williams Charles Fleming still haunts the site. I would have thought that it would be her that would haunt the site since it was her promise that was broken, but maybe that's just me. Coming up in our 3rd spot today, we have the Norwich Cathedral in England. Built in the year 1096, this church has a very Gothic but yet Romanesque look. The area around this church is almost 1,000 years old, and as you can imagine, there have probably been a lot of ups and downs within these years. As a result of such a turbulent history, it is believed that there are many spirits wandering the surroundings. Some believe it to be previous bishops and priests and possibly nuns, and some believe it to be people who were burned at the stake. Personally, I think it's the latter. If I were burned at the stake, you better believe I'm coming back to haunt you. Gosh, I'm so glad to be living in 2022. In our 2nd spot today, we have the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. Known for having the finest architecture in Scotland, the church was founded in the 15th century. There are many ghostly legends surrounding this church, including the White Lady, who was believed to have been cursed by an evil spirit and is waiting for her knight to save her. People have said to have seen a barking dog spirit and the ghost of many monks walking around. People that have worked on the building, especially in the crypt, have vowed to never work there ever again. So that's saying a lot. I mean, if I were going to pick a place that I would think the devil would be wandering in, this would be it. Finally, in our first spot today, we have a personal favorite of mine, the Church of Our Lady Before Tin in Prague, Czech Republic, or more commonly known as the Devil's Church. Yep, if that doesn't tell you everything, then I'm not sure what to tell you. I have actually personally visited this church and the underground of this church, and I have to say, it is truly anxiety-provoking. This church is a beautiful landmark in the center of Old Town Prague. Created in the 14th century, its look is quite the reflection of the times. Intimidating. Inside its walls are altar paintings and old Baroque designs. But of course, it is also the home to many tombs and burials and dark secrets. Some say many brutal killings and hangings have happened in and around this church. Makes you ask the age-old question, what is the point of worshiping the Bible if you ain't gonna practice its teachings? Humans are a mystery to me.
Number 10. SS Watertown. In December 1924, James Courtney and Michael Meehan were crew members on the SS Watertown. They were cleaning a cargo tank of the oil tanker, and they were overcome by gas fumes, which resulted in both of their deaths. Due to this, the crew buried them at sea, but to their astonishment, the ghostly faces of the soldiers appeared in the water the next day. Yeah, like in the waves. Later on, many other crew members reported seeing the faces as well. The faces were so visible that the captain of the ship ordered them to take a picture of them to have for proof, so people didn't think that they were crazy. And this was smart, because if someone told me they saw faces of two dead men in the water, I would probably never talk to them again and think that they were cuckoo. Although, in the picture, you can clearly see two faces, which is just plain creepy. When the SS Watertown returned to land, the negative was even checked for fakery and proclaimed genuine. So yeah, just two faces chilling in the waves. No big deal. Number 9. The Nurse. This photo was taken in an abandoned tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky called Waverly Hills Sanatorium in 2006. As you can imagine, many people passed away here, and it's rumored to be filled with paranormal activity. In recent years, it has become one of America's most popular destinations for ghost hunters. This image depicts a woman just standing to the right side, but when the photo was taken, no one was there. It was a ghost. It has been agreed among the paranormal community that the photo depicts Mary Lee, a nurse who took her own life in the hospital. The story goes this poor woman was impregnated by a doctor who worked in the hospital, but later wanted nothing to do with her. Nowadays, she wanders the halls of the hospital and interacts with ghost hunters. Number 8. Tulip Staircase. Reverend Ralph Hardy, a retired clergyman from White Rock, British Columbia, took this famous photograph in 1966. Originally, he only wanted to take a picture of the elegant tulip staircase in the Queen's House section of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. And I mean, I don't blame him. They're pretty. But upon development, the photo revealed a shrouded figure climbing the stairs. It's strange and unsettling, and Ralph said there was no one else in the frame when he took it. Experts who examined the original negative concluded that it had not been tampered with. The vicinity of this staircase is rumored to be haunted, and unexplained footsteps have often been heard there, so it's most likely something supernatural who just wanted their photo taken. Number 7. The Brown Lady. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is a ghost that reportedly haunts Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. It became one of the most famous hauntings in the United Kingdom when photographers from Country Life magazine claimed to have captured its image. According to the legend, the Brown Lady is the ghost of Dorothy Walpole, the sister of Robert Walpole, generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, second Viscount Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story goes that when Charles discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her rooms in the family home, Raynham Hall. According to Mary Wortley Montagu, Dorothy was in fact entrapped by the Countess of Wharton. She invited Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that her husband would never allow her to leave, not even to see her children. She remained at the Raynham Hall until her death in 1726 from smallpox. This is just an extremely sad story, and I can't imagine her pain. The first sighting of the Brown Lady was in 1835, and the photograph was taken in 1936. Number 6. Falling through the ceiling. Back in the 1950s, the Cooper family from Texas moved into their new house. Once there, they took a family photo, which seems normal, right? Well, not for them. When the picture was developed, the image of a body falling from the ceiling was clearly visible. To be clear, no one fell from the ceiling when they took the photo, so what happened? As further investigation on the story has brought no plausible explanation, there exist many speculations, including one that argues that the shadow is the ghost of the previous owner of the house. But my question is, why is he falling from the ceiling, and why did he have to ruin that beautiful family photo? I remember seeing this photo on the internet when I was probably too young to see it, and after all these years, this image still gives me chills. Ugh. Number 5. Backseat Ghost. On March 22nd, 1959, Mabel Chinnery and her husband drove to the graveyard in which her mother had been buried. Her mother had died a week previously, and they were going to take photos of her grave, and they did. As Mabel returned to the car, she decided to use her last remaining shot to take a candid picture of her husband waiting in the vehicle on the passenger side. Nothing was out of the ordinary, it was just a random photo, but when the pictures were developed, one of Mabel's friends pointed out that someone, believed to be her mother, appeared to be behind her husband in the back seat of the car. Now, was the figure her mother or some other spirit? Who knows? I mean, they were in a graveyard, it could have been anyone or anything. The photograph itself wasn't seen in the United States until the story got a whole page in the Sunday newspaper. Mabel stated that the spot where the unexpected figure appeared in the back of the car is where her mother always sat when they went for drives, so it makes sense that it could be her. An unnamed photo expert is quoted as saying, "The lady in the back can't be the result of a double exposure. If it were, the door's upright wouldn't block off part of her face, and she can't be a reflection in the window either." So maybe it really is Mabel's mother. Number 4. Wem Ghost. On November 19th, 1995, Wem Town Hall burned to the ground in Wem, Shropshire, located in England. During the fire, Tony O'Rahilly, a sewage farm worker who was also an amateur photographer, was originally stopped by police from approaching the burning building. He took a picture of the blaze from across the street with a 200mm lens. It appeared to depict the image of a young girl in the doorway of the burning building. Now, to be clear, there were no injuries or fatalities from the fire. This was not a human. Locals who saw the photo believed it was the ghost of Jane Churm, a young girl who was accused in 1677 of starting a fire in the same town. The image of the girl in the doorway of the burning building was not noticed by Tony, the photographer, or the onlookers. It only appeared after the photo had been developed. I mean, if she was accused of starting a fire and then she popped back up in an area where another fire started, it seems like it really could be Jane. Number 3. The Spectre of Newby Church. The Spectre of Newby Church is the name given to a figure in the photograph taken in the Church of Christ the Consoler on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. The image was taken in 1963 by the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord. As the figure appears to resemble a human, much speculation has been had regarding what type of person might be in the image. Most speculation by believers has concluded that it resembles a 16th century monk with a white shroud over his face, possibly to mask leprosy or another disfigurement. Others believe it looks like a plague doctor from the 16th and 17th centuries. Initial claims suggest that the figure would measure at 9 feet tall, but its feet are not visible, so it could easily be standing on a box, giving the impression of height. Some people thought the photo was due to double exposure, but photographic experts have concluded that the image is not the result of double exposure. So what was it, and why was it in a church? No one truly knows, but it's extremely frightening. What does it look like to you? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. Mystery Guest. On January 22nd, 1985, the Coventry Freeman organization and their guests stood in prayer during a dinner event. All the guests are still, and as it was a dark room, the photographer probably thought it would be the perfect time to allow for a longer than usual exposure to get enough light into the picture. Makes sense. Now, nothing was out of the ordinary at the time, but as people started to see the print of the picture, a mystery surfaced. Who was the robed figure standing near the end of one of the tables? No one had dressed up for the event, and no one remembers anyone standing there as they stood for prayer. The figure also seems to be taking part in the prayer, head slightly bowed, hands clasped in front. St. Mary's Coventry, Warwickshire is where the event was hosted. It has many legends of ghosts and paranormal activity, but I wonder why this being decided decided to join in prayer. It just gives me bad vibes, like evil lurks within it. And coming in at number 1 is The Young Boy. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13th, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald Defoe ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was then arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. In December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and claimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it. All of this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying in the house for 28 days, and honestly, I don't blame them. Due to this, demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught this photo. The picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Believers of the haunting think that the picture is the ghost of the youngest Defoe son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time. Others believed it's a staged photo, but despite its controversy, this picture is one of the most frightening images from the Amityville horror.
At number 10, we have the Temple of Amida in Japan. Let's kick off this list by flying over to Japan. The Japanese have some of the best ghost stories in history. I still have scenes from The Ring and The Grudge burned into my brain. Those were perfect movies for me to watch as a 13-year-old boy. I remember the girl in the closet who looks like she just got pushed through a trash compactor and then left out in the sun for 8 years. Yeah, when you're 13 and you see that out of nowhere, you don't forget it overnight. Well, this is a classic Japanese ghost story from the Temple of Amida that was built 700 years ago. Legend goes that a blind man was brought to play music for a dead emperor in the graveyard. He was led by a priest, but the blind dude didn't know he was playing music for a bunch of ghosts. The priest would cover his body in protective symbols so the spirits couldn't see him. But one time he brought the blind dude in, but he forgot to cover his ears, so the spirits cut his ears off. Then he died in the graveyard. It's said that you can still hear the blind guy's music playing in the graveyard. Ooh. At number 9, we have the Church of St. Nicholas in Plucky, England. We're gonna jump on a plane and fly over to jolly old England for the most haunted town in the UK. Plucky, England is a place where the hauntings are hot and the people still live there. Everyone knows you can live wherever you want, right? It's not the 1800s anymore, where if you try to move to a new town, half your family will die and it'll take you a year and a half. Plucky is so haunted that when Halloween rolls around, they need to bring in more cops because so many drunk dummies come to the town to dress slutty and see if they can run into a phantom. And in this town is the Church of St. Nicholas, where the spirit of Lady Deering walks around looking for her dead kid. It's said that she was buried in 7 lead coffins, but it didn't stop her from breaking out and haunting the hell out of this church. I don't even think lead does anything to ghosts. I think it's supposed to be silver. They were probably like 7 silver coffins? Jesus Christ, that's expensive. Let's use lead and hope for the best. At number 8, we have the Chapel of Bones. Now it's time to head over to Portugal for one of the creepiest arts and crafts projects I've ever seen. Back in Portugal, somewhere in the 16th century, the cemeteries were getting too full. People were dying too quick. So when this happens, they need to dig up all the old, already rotted bodies, take out the dry bones, and then plop the fresh bodies into the hole. Now usually when you got something like this happening, they take all the bones, then make something like the Paris catacombs. But that's not what the monks of the Church of St. Francis wanted to do. They were like, hey, let's take all these dope bones and make a bone house so everyone can bone in it. No, they did build a chapel made of bones, but that's not why they built it. They built this clavicle castle to remind people they were going to die, so they should be good people before they die. They were literally like, you see this? You see this spooky skeleton house? Be a better person! It's made with concrete and using around 5,000 bones. I wonder if that's legal to do today. Like if I built a little doghouse made out of bones on my front yard for my dog and to scare kids off my lawn. Could I do that? At number 7, we have St. Andrew's Church in Selkirk, Manitoba. Get your winter coat, we're heading over to Selkirk, Manitoba to check out the Church of St. Andrew's. We're going all over the world with this one. By the end of this video, you'll have no excuse not to check out a scary church. Unless you're like me and you're just not going to do that because that's a terrible way to spend your day. Well, the Church of St. Andrews is nicknamed St. Andrews on the Red because if you're lucky, you'll see a set of glowing red eyes in the church. Great, I put on all my nice clothes for church and I just pissed myself. People have also said that they've seen a ghost dude and a ghost lady walking around the graveyard. And my favorite haunting from this church is people have said they've seen a ghost car. What? I didn't know ghosts could have cars. This might be the only ghost with a car. If this is true, this guy for sure bangs. If you're the only dude in the afterlife with a ball and ride, you're getting laid. Dude, this ghost is probably just riding past the cemetery to pick up chicks. This dude could be driving the only Phantom Rolls-Royce Phantom. At number 6, we have the St. Mark's Episcopal Church in the UK. Back to England, guys, it's apparently the bell tower of this haunted church that is the hotspot for supernatural activity. Legend says that the stonemason who was building the tower fell to his death before the tower was finished, and then started haunting the workers who came to finish the tower. They pleased the spirit by building him his own room in the tower, which is so funny to me. They were like, we know you're upset that you're dead, but we all came together and got you something nice. Here's your room. There's a little bench in it, there's a memory foam mattress, and we know you're a stonemason, so we filled the bookcase full of the best books about stonemasonry. Do you like it? At number 5, we have St. George's Church in the Czech Republic. This church is old as hell. It was built in 1352. I'll bet money that this building is not up to code. Well, back in the day when this church was shiny and new, it didn't take long before the people thought it was cursed because fires kept breaking out in the darn thing. People kept going though. In the Czech Republic, they're not afraid of curses. But in 1968, when the roof collapsed on some people during a funeral, everyone decided to stop going to church. Kinda. They held mass outside. These guys really love God. Because there was now a massive hole in the roof, the townfolk needed to find a way to fix it. And they did this by playing up the whole curse story of the church. They put in some sculptures of shrouded figures in the church and then turned it into a haunted tourist attraction and raised enough money to fix the church. Oh, this one's kinda sweet. At number 4, we have Basilica of Our Lady of Good Health. We're in India, baby, in the town of Velankani, where the site of this church was picked because they saw spirits beforehand. They wanted the church to be haunted even before it was built. Interesting choice. There's several ghosts who have been walking around this place, primarily one of a woman and her young child, who people think is Mother Mary and Jesus himself. People have even said that they've been healed by these ghosts, but I think they're probably liars. At number 3, we have the Church of Bones. Another church covered in bones. Bricks must have been expensive back then. Well, this one is way crazier than the Bone House. It all started in 1278 when an abbot came to the spot where the church stands today with a handful of dirt. He said the dirt was from the site where Jesus was crucified, and then he dusted the land with it. Then everyone in Europe wanted to be buried there. It was the place to get buried, baby. So there were a ton of bodies there. Then in the 1800s they wanted to build a church there, so they had to dig up all the bodies, and it was one dude's job to stack all the bones. He made 6 pyramids of bones from 70,000 people. The bones were later used to decorate the whole church. There's a chandelier in there that has every bone from the human body. At number 2, we got Old Rock Church in Texas. We made it to America, where this little abandoned church is still a happening place. It was built between 1884 and 1886, but shut down not too long after because another church got built nearby. But that didn't stop this place from being a hotspot, because apparently ghosts still go there, especially on Sundays. This new church may have had a fresh coat of paint, but the Old Rock Church had followers so devoted they still came to church after they died. People have seen all sorts of ghosts and lights coming from this church, but the craziest haunting that happens there is when people hear a full choir singing. Damn, this place is lit! And number 1 on our list is Church of Greyfriars. For our first place, we shoot back over to England. The Church of Greyfriars was once the most haunted place in London, but now only the spire stands. And it's haunted for good reason. It's a burial place of the Queen known as the She-Wolf of France. She had her husband killed, King Edward II, by having a hot iron rod inserted into his anus so it would burn his insides. It's said you can still hear his screams. When she died, she was buried with her husband's heart on her chest. And on the full moon, her ghost will rise, clenching the beating heart of her dead husband. Yeah, you get killed by a hot poker in the butt and your screams echo out for eternity. That's how you get number 1 on this list.
Alright, coming in at number 10, we have St. Mary the Virgin Church in Clophill in the United Kingdom. She may lay in ruins, but the chances are that this dilapidated building will ruin you. Sitting quiet in the sleepy old English village of Clophill, there is said to be a force of evil here. Blimey. Laying abandoned and in ruins is the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, built in 1350. Interestingly, the church's altar faces south, towards hell, rather than the traditional east, which is where churches usually face to point to heaven. Basically, a whole bunch of Christians believe that the south-facing altar was constructed on purpose, and that the church was secretly a satanic meeting spot. The church has a very long history of reported hauntings, and people believe that the satanic rituals still take place here. The graveyard was desecrated in the 1970s, so now all of the gravestones sit facing the perimeter wall, which kind of makes it even creepier. Coming into number 9, we have St. Paul's in New York. St. Paul's Chapel is often named the Little Chapel That Stood, and when you see pictures of it, you'll totally understand why. Built in 1766, the chapel now sits among skyscrapers at the base of the World Trade Center. It's the final resting place of Alexander Hamilton, the place that George Washington prayed on his inauguration day. It survived the Great Fire of New York and the 9/11 attacks, becoming a safe haven and spot of refuge for those who work to save people from the wreckage and put out the fires. All in all, it actually kinda sounds like a good place, so why is it so scary? I'll cut to the chase. There's a headless ghost here. A ghost without a head. Double the spooks. Actor George Frederick Cook was said to have donated his skull to the theatre to be used as the iconic piece in Hamlet. Good on him. He was buried sans head at the St. Paul Cemetery and is now said to wander the grounds looking for his, head. St. Paul isn't the worst of them for sure. I actually kind of think it's a bit quirky and I like the sound of a headless ghost. Coming into number 8, we have the Chernobyl Church. Has anyone watched Chernobyl on Netflix? Yeah, I haven't, but I keep meaning to. I hear it's really good. Let me know if you have in the comment section. Anyway, on the 28th of April 1986, a nuclear reactor exploded at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near Pripyat. Since that day, there has been a 10-kilometer exclusion zone that won't be safe to enter for a very long time. Nuclear cleanup is still too dangerous and is set for the year 2065, which is 80 years on from the disaster. Right now, there are a whole load of abandoned places sitting there, poisoned and spooky. Some people have even broken into the exclusion zone to see them, although very much at their own risk. One adventurer came across this old, sad and abandoned church in Krasny village in the exclusion zone. Honestly, so spooky. Spookier still, coming into number 7, we have Egg Hill Church in Pennsylvania. Egg Hill kinda sounds like a cute, sweet place, doesn't it? But actually, it really isn't. The now abandoned Egg Hill Church is rumored to be one of the more haunted buildings in the world, filled with unholy spirits. According to legend, a pastor arrived on the job in 1927, and shortly after he delivered his sermon, he decided to kill his entire flock as they took Holy Communion. Then, he killed himself by hanging himself. I can't confirm this with research, it's likely just an urban legend, but nonetheless, a lot of people think that the building is extremely haunted and very hateful. Coming into number 6, we have St. Michan's Church in Dublin. Ireland. A country of so much rich history. Rich history can also be translated to a lot of dead people over the years too. It's kind of the case with this church. It was built in 1095 on the site of an old Norse chapel. It has a history of dead people extending back 1,000 years, which is bound to give a place a certain vibe. The church was rebuilt in 1686 and a large pipe organ was installed. Apparently Handel is said to have first played his Messiah. Despite the change in building structure, the crypt remains the same. Now the crypt is made of limestone, which is perfect for preserving mummies. Amongst the bodies in the crypt are an 800-year-old crusader, a 400-year-old nun, 2 brothers who took part in a rebellion against the British, a thief identified by their missing hands. Fact for you, up until July 2017, visitors were actually allowed to touch the mummies. Oddly, while the crypt is really good for preserving human remains, it seems that the wooden coffins that they're buried in just keep bursting open and exposing bodies. Ugh. Sadly, in February 2019, the crypt was broken into and bodies were assaulted. The head of the crusader was stolen and the nun's body was chopped and decapitated. Another body was turned over in its grave. So who would disrespect the dead like this? We don't know, but luckily the crusader's head was eventually found and returned to the body. But I'm thinking, there are some angry mummies in that crypt. Coming into number 5, we have the Borgund Stave Church in Norway. I would love to go to Norway, but to me, this is just looking creepy from the off. Creepy, but I have to say a little bit cool. It kind of looks less like a church and more so like a witch's mansion, or maybe the Weasley's burrow. I guess that is kind of a witch's and wizard's home, even if they're good ones, but still, it's creepy just to look at. The church is slap bang in the middle of a medieval cemetery, and it is made from wood, but has somehow stood for 1,000 years, which to me is even more weird. There are strange engravings of animals and mystical creatures inside, and ancient runes to boot. Here be witches? Dragons? The imagination runs wild. Do you like unexplained wailing sounds? If so, you will love this at number 4. We have the Church of St. Andrew on Staten Island. This church dates back to the early 1700s and is located in Richmond, Staten Island. The church was used as a hospital during the American Revolution, and it seems to have left a deep scar on the building. These days, it is said that the spirits of the dead soldiers haunt the halls, wailing, walking, knocking, creeping, just generally being creepy little ghosts. Candles flicker without wind, and some claim to have seen them float. There's a chill in the air here, even on a hot, heavy summer's day. Coming into number 3, we have Oradour-sur-Glane Church in France. This is one of the saddest and scariest church stories of all time. War was an abysmal period of time for Europe, and between the two feuds, decades were lost to bloodshed. While the majority of the countries eventually recovered, deep scars were left in the land. A number of places that existed before simply didn't survive, including Oradour-sur-Glane. On the 10th of June 1944, German SS soldiers destroyed the French village, killing 642 of its inhabitants, with just 20 people managing to escape. The black shirts rounded up the men and shot them at point blank range in a barn, but the church was a true horror. Women and children were rounded up into the village church, locked inside, and then burned alive as German soldiers set fire to the holy building. Hundreds of innocent people lost their lives in these walls. Honestly, I feel really bad for the people that had to go and find them there. French president of the time, Charles de Gaulle, ordered that the town remained untouched as a memorial to those who lost their lives in the savage attack. People can still visit the area and see the village left ransacked as it was that night. They can also see what remains of the church, if they dare. Coming into number 2, we have the Sedlec Ossuary in Czech Republic. It isn't the outside of this church that is the issue. Have a little look. See, no scarier than any other church, right? Well, my friends, step inside. This church is filled with the remains of 40 to 70,000 people, which, yikes. Not even that, like out of sight, out of mind. If they were buried somewhere or like in the walls, that would be fine. But this chapel is decorated with the bones and skulls of the dead. There are pillars made out of bones, a chandelier of bones, a coat of arms made from actual arms, and then I'm sorry, but why is there a skull on this cherub's knee? I'm honestly kind of petrified. Why are their skulls holding bones in their mouths? This is macabre and I don't like it. It seems that the church dates back to 1278, but in the early 16th century, bones were exhumed by a blind monk. A lot of the bones are thought to belong to plague victims. Ugh. So, how do you top a church made of bones? Ho ho ho. Get ready for number 1. We've got the Satanic Temple, a place that I don't want to be. Prayers to God will not help you in the Satanic Church, but you could pray to Lucifer, not that I would advise it. At the Satanic Church, unholy pastor Victor Damien Rosso, who by the way claims that he is the son of the devil, suggests that people make a pact with Lucifer himself, his dad. Why? Well, so they can become rich, and then the devil will own their soul. Classic. The Church of Lucifer is located in Colombia and actually does look pretty churchy. It seems that Rosso was raised Catholic but denounced God and turned to the devil. Do you want to look inside? I feel like you do. Check out this clip from a Vice documentary. I have to say, Like, all joking aside, it does have some pretty sweet decor. Leather chairs, black curtains, big black and red satanic pentacles, backlit upside down crosses, and an altar to the Dark Lord himself. Can we just talk about how Lucifer's throwing the classic rock hand here, like Satan loves heavy metal? What a cliche! Locals have complained about the amount of animals ritually sacrificed by the group. Wanna have a look at what a satanic ritual at the church looks like? Here you go. I do enjoy a good candle, but honestly, this is all a bit intense for me, and culty. I really don't enjoy a cult, I just need to be free.